Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has asked all parties to cooperate in ensuring Parliament's functioning for the sake of 100 crore concerned countrymen. And his words were echoed by President Pranab Mukherjee in his 20-page address, during which the President also urged all MPs to discharge their solemn responsibilities in a spirit of cooperation and mutual accommodation to collectively build a flourishing and prosperous India. Now, all political parties have by and large agreed with the President's and the Prime Minister's sentiments.
The budget session of Parliament has begun, but the big question still is, how different will this session be from the previous two sessions? Both the President and the Prime Minister have requested all political parties in Parliament to debate and discuss and thereby help strengthen democracy. In his address to the joint sitting at the start of the budget session, President Pranab Mukherjee said, Parliament symbolizes the aspirations of the people and democratic debate and discussion are necessary while obstructing the system is not.
Our Parliament reflects the supreme will of the people. Democratic temper calls for debate and discussion and not disruption or obstruction.
The President said, being a member of Parliament is a matter of pride, but it comes with significant responsibility. Considering the number of disruptions in the previous two sessions, especially in the Rajya Sabha, the President's remarks are very significant. The Prime Minister too had said, the country's eyes are centered on Parliament and 100 crore countrymen will be hoping for optimum utilization of time.
सभी विपक्ष के साथियों ने जो सकारात्मक रुख दिखाया है, आज से प्रारंभ हो रहे सत्र में और आने वाले दिनों में उसका पूरा एहसास देशवासियों को जरूर होगा.
All political parties have come out in support of the President's and Prime Minister's words and are in favor of Parliament functioning and discussing issues in the House.
वो तो हम भी कह रहे हैं, हम भी नहीं चाहते. पार्लियामेंट तो चलना चाहिए ना, और कोशिश हमारी रहेगी कि पार्लियामेंट चले.
TRS party always has been strategically supporting the government wherever required for the nation in terms of GST, in terms of land acquisition and bills like that, which will change the course of nation.
The Treasury, on its part, has assured the opposition that it is willing to discuss all issues.
Willing to discuss all these issues, whether it is Jawaharlal Nehru University or whether Hyderabad University, whether it is Pathankot, whether it is Jat reservation, all these issues, they are not created by this government. We inherited some of these problems.
The important upcoming days in the session are February 25th, Railway Budget, February 26th, Economic Survey, and February 29th, the General Budget. The first part of the budget session concludes on 16th March, after which both houses take a 40-day recess. The second part of the session starts on 25th April and ends on 13th May. In the budget session, government is set to pass 32 bills, but given the Congress party's stance in the Rajya Sabha, it will not be an easy task.
हमने तो स्पष्ट कहा है, जिस बिल में सर्वसम्मति हो सकती है उसको पारित किया जाएगा, पास किया जाएगा, और जिन बिलों में थोड़ा कुछ ऑब्जेक्शन है या भिन्न मत है, तो ऐसे में बैठकर जो भी एक पर्याय निकल आएगा तो उसके ऊपर निर्णय लिया जाए.
The GST Constitutional Amendment Bill, Real Estate Regulation Bill, Bankruptcy Law, Lokpal and Lokayukta Bill, Whistleblower Protection Bill, Labour reforms are among several important bills still pending. It remains to be seen how this session of Parliament is able to steer clear of the trend of disruptions from the previous two sessions. With Parliament team, Newsnight Desk, DD News.
Well, and to discuss this session of Parliament, which has just begun, we have with us in the studio Shekhar Iyer, political editor of the Deccan Herald, and Prakash Chawla, senior journalist. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us. Shekhar Iyer, we'll start with you. On the one hand, the President, in his address, talked about the progress that the government is making, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, and the policies that support the last man standing. And then he nudges parliamentarians to allow Parliament to function, because even though the government is doing so much, it can do much more. if Parliament functions, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think the President's speech, which is cleared by the Cabinet, essentially puts forth what's the government's plan and what the government policies are. And in listing all that has been done, particularly in the last 1 year, since the last budget session, the various initiatives, whether it is Jan Dhan Yojana, whether it is crop insurance,
Right.
or Make in India program, basically it outlines the kind of achievements that have been possible even in terms of launching such mega flagship programs.
Right.
And I think the President's address this time sought to convey the message when there is so much attack on the government, when there's so much that is being said that nothing has happened, nothing has changed. This is a kind of a reminder, look, these things have happened.
Okay.
But these are the things that need to be more discussed in Parliament.
Right.
And,
Sure.
the narrative is not being reflected.
So, Mr. Chawla, if we look at the farmers' issues, there's the Fasal Bima Yojana, soil health card to 14 crore farmers. There's an agricultural market that's talked about. There's a blue revolution. In terms of all this, government will be needing also the help of Parliament. After all, the farming community is definitely a vote bank for everybody, isn't it? So at least Parliament should be functioning with regard to farmers' interests.
Well, there are two issues. You talked about the rural focus,
Yes.
as very well reflected in the President's address. I feel that this will also be reflected in the budget, because the rural economy is in a state of distress, not really crisis, but state of distress, with two successive failures of monsoons. So several states are facing the problems of farmers' distress. So government is well aware of it, and which is very well reflected in the President's address. So I have a strong feeling that the budget should reflect some of the concerns, and the bias, if it is there in the budget, should be, and my strong feeling is in favor of the rural economy,
Okay.
which is in a state of stress because of the problems there. And it goes without saying that naturally Parliament should, even if the agrarian economy is in a stress, the
Yes.
issue must be debated, and
Right.
the suggestions must come forward from different political parties,
Fair enough.
from different regions, as to how to tackle these issues. If the government, after all, Prime Minister himself
Said
said
that the government can be criticized. I mean, that's
Can be
the whole
criticised.
role of the
Sure,
opposition is to criticize the government.
Sure.
So, if the role of the government, of the opposition is to criticize the government, Mr. Shekhar Iyer, do you think that the opposition will be, taking their job seriously in terms of debate and discussion, and not in terms of disruption in this session? Because we did see, the question is valid, because the monsoon session and the winter session were a complete mess.
I think so, because after all, opposition has every right, and it is their job. They have to act as a kind of a guard, and also play the role of critic. But all these things can be done only if you have a proper debate, and you don't impose conditions. We will allow this to function only if this is done. We'll see what has happened in the last few sessions has been too many conditions, too many technicalities. Whether it will be in this motion or that motion.
Right.
I think ultimately you don't get to hear a very enlightened debate, a debate that can even enlighten the government, because it's possible that many of the government policies need that kind of critical input, which could
Yes.
perhaps improve those programs, or some betterment can be done. On the other hand, what we see is the raise of allegations, and then the whole thing ends up in adjournment and people rushing out to give bites outside rather than having a proper debate inside.
Fair enough. Mr. Chawla, if we look at the focus of the President's address, again, then apart from the rural economy, there was the focus on youth. And then we saw the reference to the Mudra Yojana, out of which 2.07 women entrepreneurs have benefited, 2.07 crore women entrepreneurs have benefited. That's quite a significant number.
Well, I think the focus clearly tells us the story of a big challenge, which is the challenge of creating employment. Now, with this kind of state of economy all over the world, which slowdown is quite a biting slowdown. Although the President's address does make a reference to India being the bright spot and the heaven of stability.
Yes.
But the fact is that these challenges cannot be denied. These challenges are there. And one of the biggest problems, or the challenge, for any government or for this government is to how do we create employment. So there comes the new initiative like Skill India, Startup India.
Startup India
Startup
and
India,
linked
Skill
with
India,
Mudra Yojana.
And Mudra Yojana relates to the micro units. I want to focus on one thing. Lot has been said about the non-performing assets of the banks. Now, if you see who is the main defaulter,
yes,
it is not the mind you, agriculture sector comes out with flying colors.
Sure.
Its role in the NPA is only about 7%, whereas the role of the mid-cap segment is 31%.
Right.
So the agri sector as also the micro units have done much better in terms of repayment of loans.
Right. Mr. Shekhar Iyer, also India has jumped 12 places in this World Bank Ease of Doing Business report, which is also a significant step when we look at it, because the government is trying to bring in investments into the country, and ease of doing business. There have been measures that have taken root, and the results are being seen by bodies like the World Bank.
Because this and also doing away with outdated laws, outdated procedures.
And more is required with the GST. More is required with the GST.
And
yes, and so these other bills that are pending in Parliament.
If you really want that kind of a kickstart or some kind of a jump ahead kind of thing, you cannot believe that you have a luxury of time. I mean, you can't hope. I mean, we can wait for some more time. That cannot be. And I don't think people are willing to just watch this some kind of a seasonal thing happening in Parliament and not. And see, already there is a list of 32 bills pending. That's a huge number. So therefore, I think with the Prime Minister and the President both giving that signal, come, let us discuss, let us thrash out, but let's do it in the way our Parliament provides for.
Right.
And move ahead.
We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us here on News Night.